second thing is when we originally designed these wells, we designed them for emergency use. December 31st obviously became an emergency because MIT said shut off the water. You're not taking any more for the lake, so we kicked on the wells. Got it. Here we are 3 months later, and we're still on the wells.
Right.
Now, I understand that some of that has to do with the turbidity in the water, and it's super dirty in our treatment plant, but it caused us a lot of work. However, as a member of the public, again, I would be concerned with some of the comments that were made. It takes a long time to replenish these aquifers. And I know at the last meeting, it was asked that some information be put out to the public to let them know that we're still on the wells. Did I miss it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, you didn't. I'm sorry. I just was making myself a note of things to make sure that we address.
Yeah.
And
well, I think that the key would be is if there is a reason we're still on the wells, i.e. our treatment plant can't handle it. I don't know what. There could be a multitude of things, and Randy probably has the answers to those. But it's important that the public understands why we're still on those wells.
Right. Yeah.
And not on the lake, because everyone knows the lake is up. Mm-hmm. We could pull water from the lake right now.
Very soon.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So what are the other?
Let me go through.
Yeah, go through it.
Okay. Well, number 2 is on Ranchito.
Right.
It's on the county road right away. Then you've got what's called currently Medina, which is when we purchased the property, there was a well there intended for irrigation. We've developed that into a public well. Also on that property, we were able to tap into another crack in the rock, and it did take us 13 times to find those cracks in the rock. So that was another full well. And then as prior to drilling that second one on the Medina property, we had drilled a number in between to try to find more water. We found well 3 and 4, which were drilled and developed and then put casing in them and then tested per state standards down on El Prado Park. Right. So those 2 wells, those were significant expense to go through the testing and environmental permitting and everything we had to do for those. Those are actually the cost of developing those to the point that we did is actually within the well number 5. It's kind of the evaluation to get to.
So there is no well number 6 or a third one on the property.
No.
So it's just a cleanup of the one at Del Prado.
Yes.
Plus 3.
Yes.
Okay.
If I could ask Pete, if I could ask you to just respond to that question I asked you earlier, and then I'll go ahead and make a motion on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go to page 9.
Yeah.
Page 9.
Yes.
You have second from the bottom, purchase water actual MID. My mistake. I did not get back to Ever, which is with Warren CPAs, and let him know that we're going to use a different method of accruing the expense for that water. We do not have $11,000 worth of water that we purchased this month or last month, but on average, over the past several years, having purchased water from them, that's what it would have been. This was an attempt to accrue an expense to show a more relevant cash position by showing that we would have that, because we don't get billed every month. We get billed on a basis where we've got a chunk of money that comes out, and we would appear to be doing really well on the budget, and then all of a sudden we got a big bill from MIT. So this was a way to come up with this, instead of just saying 1/12 of the annual expense comes in, this was taking the typical percentage of water used in March and applying that to what the total bill would have been. However, we're not purchasing as much water, we're not producing as much water, that this number is not even relevant, because as of the first of the year, we haven't pumped any. So there's been no expense for water purchases.
That's what I wanted you to explain. Also, if they would take that actual off of here and make that accrual.
Something to change it as well.
Yeah.
And that, and I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this, all
I'll
four
get that
items.
changed.
I noticed we changed the verbiage in the emergency declaration to include some stuff about the lake pumps, not the lake pumps, but I don't know what we want to call them. The permanent pump. We'll call it the permanent pump. Everybody know what I'm at? Okay.
Yeah.
We put a caveat in there that says that because it's been sitting idle, we might have problems
Yeah.
with it. Is that, it seems kind of strange to me, maybe you can explain.
No.
Will that allow us to continue in an emergency status with that verbiage placed in there? Is that why we put it in there?
No, it's just, I wanted these, I didn't want this to just be the same resolution spit out over and over. So, because we're required by the code to take action on it every month, I wanted to have some relevant information based on what we know today. And the concern would be it might run for a few days, and then things might break down, and then we have to go back on the wells. And so anyway,
You got
that's
it.
what it is.
You answered my question, thanks.
Thank you.
That was actually 5 items, not 4 items. A through D?
A through D.
Yes. Oh, yes, it is 4, I'm sorry.
The prohibition, Lou, was put into place, I think, I don't know if you were on the board at that time.
Yes, I was.
Okay. We said the one well that we had was such a minimal amount of water that they were concerned about, I'll say, over-stressing it, tapping it out, whatever term you want to use. The prohibition was put in just to those customers. It wasn't, we didn't stop feeding people within the subdivision. Those people are still within the district boundaries, are entitled to water.
We
They
weren't
have to-
using the ground well for people in the subdivision.
I know that, I know.
They
that.
don't have a
So I
reason to
guess I'm
use the well.
confused, Lou, when you're saying we're putting in the wells to serve the outside place of use. If that's what I'm hearing you say.
That is what they were intended to do.
No, that wells were to supply water to the subdivision.
Well, yeah, that's what you had to say to get the grant. That's what you had to say to get the grant. And the grant people specifically told Campa it was not for new service. And that's why I want to see the letter from the USDA. What are these new conditions to get the money? I'll bet you it's falling on outside MIDPOU.
Well, when we suggested reversing that, I'll say, order, and that's all we were saying is those people that are entitled, that have gone through the qualified LAFCO process, that have annexed to the districts, that are paying availability fees, if they're entitled to water, there's a few properties out there, that's all we were trying to do is.
They are not entitled to water.
You know, that's, you can cut it, Lou. All
Do
I'm trying-
you
that's not-
realize this director right here that's missing, the short little investigation that was done by him wipes out over a quarter of your outside MIDPOU properties that you say deserve water because their statements were fraud.
I'm not saying that they deserve water, I'm saying those
Well, that's what
customers
you
that
just-
have legally gone through the process that qualify for water. I'm not saying they deserve it. If they paid into the district, they've gone through the legal process, if this district has annexed it, that's all I'm saying. If somebody has done all that, and I don't know.
We have no legal duty to serve it to them.
We're on camera.
I know, it's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have no duty, no legal duty.
We're good, no, okay, thank you.
No, yeah, we're way off.
Anything like that is and always has been just a routine, normal thing. It's not unusual to have those things occur, and state agencies ask for stuff all the time. It's just kind of a bummer when they get misinformation and then we have to respond to it.
Thank you. The next item on is the report of status and completion of the emergency groundwater well. You kind of covered that already from my perspective.
Right.
Am I missing something there?
No, that as far as we wanted to look at the cost of the.
That's the next item.
Right.
Is the cost comparison, cost of operation of emergency groundwater wells versus the operation of Lake McClure. You
Right.
provided a chart for
Right,
that.
and that information is just comparing the purchased water cost, the cost per acre foot that we pay, and the power cost.
Raw water cost.
Right. There are other costs associated with the purchased water or the surface water from Lake McClure that we're seeing now. We paid 2 bills related to the petition that was submitted to the state of California to be able to draw water below minimum pool of 115,000 acre feet. That was that we had to participate in that cost with MID, and that is another, I believe between the two of them it's $11,000. Anyway, that you would normally include that if we did a more detailed evaluation of what the surface water cost is versus the well water. We'd include that, but then also you've got the cost of operating the number of pumps that we have at the McClure intake versus the wells, and what is the cost per gallon for the equipment. That's a more detailed evaluation that we haven't started yet. We should give a little time to get back up and running, and then we can look at that.
On the outside place you use metered properties, you got somebody named Walker that came from nothing to 50 and 69
They had a leak,
over 2 months.
yes.
Okay.
I believe he may have fixed that by now. We
Hope so.
contacted him, we went out to help turn it off for him so we could.
No, so just for the purpose of the discussion, you know, the cost of operating the lake pumps last year, because they haven't been operated that much this year, is about $345, $346 per acre foot, again, just for power and purchase water. And then the cost of the wells, and again, we only have a few months of operating costs for the new wells, $173.30 per acre foot. One thing that we intend to do is when we have a little bit more metered PG&E meter data, and we also have the information from the SCADA, from the reports that we're going to get with the equipment that monitors the water levels and the power consumption, is to be able to look at it on a well-by-well basis to see if there's any difference. And you can also do a lot of troubleshooting based on the cost per acre foot.
You brought it up, the recovery of now stop pumping for a.
I don't know where we are, just a couple of weeks.
But we getting.
Yes, we are recovering. I don't know what the level is right now.
Can you report that next month?
Yes, and we should be able to have, we should have that data by the month after that. We'll have it real time. We'll be able to see what it is on a real time basis.
I'm not sure I understand it.
His question is, the wells have been running consistently for the last 4 months, and now they've been shut off. He's wondering what is the recovery rate of the water cable coming back up within the wells. And that's exactly, the well, we'll just say the wells were at 100 feet and pumping from 100 feet. And now, since they've been shut off, now the standing water level is like 90 feet or something like that. That's what he's asking. Okay. Anything else you want to mention?
No, that is the concern that you would always have with a hard rock well, is you don't ever want to draw it down to the point where your pump runs out of water. And because you don't have a defined aquifer, there's no way to measure the water supply that's behind that fracture, except that you can do the evaluation that we did when we first put the wells in to determine what their capacity might be and is. And that's where we've been operating them, and the wells have not even dropped as much as we estimated that they would. So we're comfortable with saying that the ratings that we gave those are accurate.
And now that we're on the lake water, we're still continuing to use those wells just to maintain them.
We will.
Yes.
We're not, right now, we're in construction, so we've taken that, we're disassembling that pipe and...
But there is a plan to do that.
Exactly, yeah.
Use them or exercise them periodically? Depends
To
on...
be able to, in the draft budget information, you'll see it's, I believe I have $2,000 per well, which would be about probably a month's supply from each of those wells.
Okay.
Operating them continuously for a month. It's primarily just to operate it, to see its reaction, to see how it does, and various, and also, like you said, to exercise it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Haven't done what's going on.
Are you referencing the MID water
Yes,
expense?
MID water situation, accounting situation has been corrected finally.
Purchase,
yeah,
it's on the bottom of the night, purchase water actual,
Yep, looking at it.
13,270.
On page 20.
Okay. All right, so we had budgeted year-to-date 35,664, we're at 13,200. Okay.
Well, that's a negative credit. Next month, you'll have, that's an adjustment because we have been accruing a different amount each month.
And we
Okay.
finally fixed this.
And yeah, so now what I did is I submitted the meter readings to the accounting firm, and the meter readings that are done at the first of the month for each of the locations throughout the system. So that's submitted. Then they take that based on the cost per acre foot. They do the math because we're only billed every 6 months. So this allows us to accrue that estimated expense. So that is a credit because it was shown as being spent, that we spent more previously, and that wasn't the case. It was just accrued at a higher rate.
It's a
So,
6-month adjustment.
I understand that, but all I'm getting at is we're back on the narrow path.
we have budgeted
Right.
$80,900, and we have a remaining budget of $45,236. That's the last two columns.
Right, all right.
Jim?
Yeah, I had some questions concerning the emergency resolution. I've had some hangups about this before. And some of the verbiage in here, I'm a little confused. On paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, as I understand it, I'm starting on page 27 is what we're going to adopt if this passes, correct? Is that,
Mine's not numbered.
oh,
but-
okay. Oh, wait, yeah.
The first page.
Okay. It says, whereas the district has determined that the remaining groundwater supply in Lake McClure is inadequate to meet this domestic sanitation fire purposes. But if we go back in, and I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry about that. If we go ahead to, we're talking about the savings, the conservation efforts, we have a paragraph on page 33 that says, we hereby consider that the water supply is adequate to meet the water needs of the district. So we have conflicting data. We're saying in one that we have adequate water, and another that we say we don't have adequate water. So I'm confused on that, and I'll jump to my next one.
Let me resolve that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's get-
Want to go one at a time?
Yeah. that'd be good.
That is, this resolution has been before the board each and every month for, gosh, I don't know, 9
It's
months,
been a
8
long
months.
time.
And the dilemma is, in the last 2 months, since the water supply has come up, and now the declaration is that we have adequate water supply, that could have been removed from this resolution. Because it's really, it's more of just a timing issue
Correct.
with
It's only been a matter of
with 1
weeks.
month remaining. So What was the specific page again?
27.
27, and this is, yeah.
Paragraph
is that-
104, I think.
Again, these were, all of these
looks
resolutions
boilerplate.
were related to the very beginning. So it is, it's known that that's not the case, but we could certainly consider removing the entire whereas.
My
paragraph.
concern is if we're approving this month after month, that if I raise my hand and say I'm good with this, this is a misstatement of the facts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my concern is. And I have 3 concerns actually from this, based on what it says. And I do understand it's just kind of rolled on month to month, but as things have changed over the last 2 weeks, and we're now we're not pumping from the wells, we're pumping from the lake, because there is one here that says we're deriving all our money from all our water from the emergency wells, which is indeed not true.
Let's get those exact paragraphs and
Okay.
we'll just take them out.
Paragraph,
That would have been, if
paragraph,
we would have removed those.
Can you read the paragraph for me?
Where page 104, bottom line, next to the bottom.
well, I've got 3 paragraphs. We'll start at the top. Whereas the district has determined that the remaining water supply in
Got
Lake
it.
McClure
That
And then
one
it's
is
the-
to be
then the next
removed?
one.
Is that what we're,
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yes, because I just can't say yes.
okay.
The second one is, whereas state and federal restrictions have...
Okay, keep moving, Pete. You have,
The other thing that's associated with Randy's report is the
outside.
it's outside place use reports, standard report format. Again, we did answer to the state of California on this. There was a complaint filed related to the outside place of use. A statement was made to the state that we are supplying water outside the place of use and not replacing that with well water or another source of supply. And that's not true. We've submitted the records to the state of California, and they are evaluating that. I'm sure they will respond to whoever submitted the complaint, but it does take a lot of staff time to develop the reports.
When you get a situation like that, do you hear back as well that we were in compliance? Or will we get feedback? I mean, I'm just wondering how the communication cycle works.
I'm following up on it, so
Okay.
I would assume that I'll hear about it, but in many cases, you only hear if they if they have a violation.
Okay, so if we don't hear anything, we can assume that we were in compliance.
Yeah, and well, I'm sure we are. There's nothing,
Well, yeah.
all of the documentation was submitted, and we had records going back to the beginning, but that was,
Okay.
I have a question. Pete,
yeah.
when you respond to something like that, is that considered under your contractual thing that you do with us as the general manager, or is that under that other part over there where you charge more money like for the drought emergency, or is that considered just part
There
of
are no more expenses. I had one last invoice for the drought emergency related to the USDA grant. Then there are no more. Anything like that is and always has been just a routine, normal thing. It's not unusual to have those things occur, and state agencies ask for stuff all the time. It's just kind of a bummer when they get misinformation and then we have to respond to it.
Thank you.
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no, you didn't. I'm sorry. I just was making myself a note of things to make sure that we address
Yeah.
and